Okay, welcome everybody. I'd like to officially welcome Susan here. Susan's going to be presenting today the Grandchild flow. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. And I'll be monitoring the chat. So if there's any questions that come up, I will be happy to help answer those if I can, and we can go from there.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you organizing this. Welcome, everyone. Please feel free and interrupt, ask questions. I love that we're a small group and we can really interact. But let me first start by introducing myself. See if this works. See if I know how to work it. There we go. Hey. So far, so good. Hi, again, I'm Susan Thayer. For those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, I have been around Salesforce since 2006, and I've actually am what's called a Salesforce MVP. I've been doing, was honored to be renewed for 10 years, and then in 2023, they started the MVP Hall of Fame, and I'm a member of that. I love this kind of stuff. I love giving back to the community. I love interacting because I learn by doing and giving. And I'm sure, Jason, you probably get as much out of organizing this group as you do from just putting the time and effort into it. But I do have a job. I work as an architect, a Salesforce architect at Capgemini. Have been there about 13 years. Um, Obviously, I love what I do. Just these are just some fun random facts about me. I have 22 certifications, so I love learning about Salesforce. Although I try not to get certifications on things that I don't actually need for my job. The last one I did get was Revenue Cloud Consultant, which is a fascinating new product that Salesforce is coming out with. If you're not familiar with it, you'll definitely learn more about it over the next few months. Salesforce is really pushing the revenue cloud out because every company gets revenue and they need a way to manage that. Just some fun random facts if you want to hit me up later to talk about some of these. I think I'm officially retired now, but I used to compete in Spartan races. Competed in a couple ninja races. Was actually, this is my fun fact, was actually um, I didn't compete in very many and they were all local, but I somehow managed to get ranked on the Ninja Association, which is really fun fact, although I think I was dead last. And my dream goal is to actually compete and win the amazing race. So I'm throwing that out there for the universe. If y'all know anyone or know a way for me to get on that show, if you want to audition with me, let me know. That's my dream someday. My other fun fact is Legend. So I was part of a Salesforce Plus TV show called Legend of Low Code, which really, like it sounds, was a competition, a reality show to see who could build the best solution with Salesforce platform tools without any code. And so hopefully some of that I'll be able to share with you today. I know that I'm talking, of course, with a lot of people that are more focused on development than excuse me, more focused on development than no code. And I want to let you know that it takes a developer's mindset to really make a very successful flow. It is not something that everyone has the skill set to do. And so, since you probably have all kind of made some Apex codes and things like that, I think you're well suited to transition some of those skills to flow. Today, I'm going to talk about what I'm calling the grandchildren flow. This is a very simple screen flow that accomplished something that previously would have had been done via Apex or Lightning Web Component. In my bottom here, you can see I have great grandchildren flow as well, because even though it is what I'm going to show you today is really just stopping at the grandchild level, you could really take this down a couple levels if that's what the situation required. But what the grandchildren flow will do, it's a screen flow that will show a summary of a child's related list. So a related list of a related list. Um, Let me talk about the situation here. So this is A very common problem that I've run across as a consultant is that oftentimes users are asking to see details about items that aren't on the screen because they're related to other items. So one record can have multiple child records, and then those child records can have multiple child records on top of that. And some of those are even duplicated. It's the same child record for both of those. You can, of course, solve this quite easily with a report. But if you've made any reports in Salesforce, especially around children of children, it is kind of clunky and not the best user interface. It doesn't really clearly articulate what they're trying to see. So I have some examples here that might resonate with you. So maybe somebody is asking to see an events that have been related to an account's contacts. So an account has 20 contacts. Which of your events, those could be webinars, those could be conferences, in-person events, which events have your contacts been to? So you can find any gaps or holes. Well, another example would be what campaigns are targeted to an account's contacts. So you might have an account with 10 contacts, and each of those contacts might be on 10 different campaigns, but you just want a summary of those campaigns. A third example would be if you have SKUs or products and you want to know how many have been ordered for an account, right? An account might have um, dozens of orders on it, and each of those with 3 SKUs, but you need to just kind of see a summary of that. So that's a little bit of setting the stage here of what this problem is trying to solve. Um, for my specific example that I want to demonstrate to you today, I've got a mock scenario where we have an account that is a parent of contacts. And then those contacts could be related to multiple policies. So they can have this junction object that ties the contacts to many separate policies. So you've got one account with many contacts that have multiple policies. And then some of those policies are even duplicated on multiple contacts. Um, Let me show you an example of that real quick. So here I'm on United Oil and Gas account. And you can see we've got 4 contacts here. And right now, if I'm servicing this account and I want to see the policies, I might have to click on Lauren, scroll down. Okay, she's got 3 policies. Great. Avi, scroll down, has 4 policies. But I don't know if those are 7 policies total or if there's any duplicates across that. I'm doing a lot of clicking and just trying to make some assumptions and kind of calculating in my head what's going on. So in this really simple scenario, we've got one account, 2 contacts, 4 policies, and 5 policy entries, right? These 5 arrows are the different records that relate, but what they want to see is just 4 policies. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ashley. These are just some more screenshots. Wasn't sure if my internet would hold up or not, so I have lots of screenshots, but I'll try to actually dive into Salesforce, of course, and show you things. But again, the same scenario, I got one account, 2 contacts, 5 policy entries. So what I did to solve that is I built out this screen flow that would actually show a related list. So if I go back to United Oil and Gas, you recall I clicked on Lauren, I clicked on Avi, I click on Stella. Stella's even got some policies here. So what I built to solve this problem was this tab called Policy. And when you click on that tab, it will actually count the number of policy records for those 3 or 4, how many different contacts there are. So even though when I clicked on those, I saw 11 different records, there's actually only 4 policies on there. So you can see as a user, I just click on the screen and it just pops up instantly with what I need. So let me show you how I built that. I built what I call a 4-step flow. And just like if you were to approach this from an Apex or any kind of thought on how to solve this, there's 4 things that we have to do in this scenario. The first is we get all the child contacts from the account. Then we get all the contact policy junction records related to the contacts found in number one. Then we get all the policies related to what we found in number two. And the last step is really just displaying those. So if we take this and we look at it from a lens of a flow, we essentially have three gets, our pink items here, and then one screen. So this is a screen flow, but really it's just a one screen and the user doesn't have to do anything at all to interact with it. Now, taking it a step deep, another level deep, um, I have the three steps, the three gets, and I have to actually, once I get the child contact, I have to loop through all the contacts in order to add the contact ID to a collection. This is a concept that is very difficult to comprehend for a lot of config only people, but I know we've got a lot of developers on the call and that should, resonate with you very well, and it should be very clear what that means. I just have some graphical elements to show you what it looks like on a screen flow. Um, the second one is to get the contact policy records, and then you have to loop through all of those to add the IDs to a collection. So we've got a couple of orange elements there. And then the third get is we're just getting all the policies related to that contact policy junction. And then last is the screen flow. Now, any good developer really wants to make sure we handle exceptions. So there's a couple issues that could arise in something like this. And the first one is, what if there are no records found? What if if the account doesn't even have any contacts? Or what if the contacts don't have any policies on it? So at each of our three steps after each get, we have to make a decision. So we're checking the records to see if the records are found. So for step one, we're checking the contacts. Was a record found? So we're using this orange decision element. And if there isn't any found, then we're doing another screen flow, this blue icon, to display a message to the user. We repeat that again with the contact policy, because there might have been contacts, but maybe no policies. So we do a decision to see if there were any contact policy records found. And if not, we show a junction object. We also do one at the third one where we're getting the policies. Even though we know that there was a contact policy junction found, things could still go wrong. Somebody might have deleted it. Who knows what possible issues might come up. So we also do a check there to see if any policies were found and display an error message there. But because we're all good developers, we're going to reuse those. So even though we have three checks, check here, and check here, this screen that we're showing is going to be the exact same screen. That way we're kind of reducing the complexity of our flow. And I'll show you how we do that here in a bit. This is just a screenshot of what that error message might look like. Again, this is just a mock-up, so it's quite simple, saying they click on the policies tab, and it says there are no related policies for this account. The second error that we might run across is a little bit harder to troubleshoot and to anticipate, and that is errors with the flow. We've all seen them, right? Where we just get this, oops, something happened error message. Out of the box, that flow error message is a little bit confusing to the end user. So as good developers, we want to make sure that we display a custom error message for them. And so we're going to do that by adding a fault path to every one of our get actions. So every time we get a contact record, if something goes wrong with getting that contact, we throw an error. Every time we get a contact policy record, if something goes wrong, we throw that error screen. And then also with every time we get a policy, if something goes wrong, we throw an error screen. And like before, we're going to throw the same error screen for all three of those, which is why they're in that blue box here. Again, just to make life easier for us and to make our flow cleaner. This is just an example of the flow error handling screen. We want to make sure it's reusable throughout the flow. And our main goal here is to provide user-friendly guidance. If you're writing in Apex, you can control the error message that displays on the screen, but Flow, this is how we do it with Flow. I like to also include some troubleshooting information, and I'll go over that in a little bit here when I dive into the flow. Okay, well, if no questions so far, let me just jump into the flow. I'll pause. Okay. All right, so I've got some screenshots of the flow for focus here, but then we'll dive into the actual flow itself. Again, the same three get steps are in the same order here. So this is step number one. We're getting the contact IDs. So we're getting the contact IDs here. And I don't know if I can annotate. We're getting the contact IDs here. Then we have that decision to make sure that if something is found, if no contacts are found, then that's when we're going to show an error. If contacts are found, then we go through this loop to add each of those contacts that are found to the variable for contact IDs. And then we just kind of rinse and repeat there. So step two is that sorry, trying to clear out the annotations. Okay. Step two, same thing, right? Rinse and repeat. We're getting all the contact policies. So our gets are these pink boxes. We're verifying there's information. If there is, we're throwing that data into a collection so that we can use it later in the flow. And then our last get is when we're getting the policy information. Because this is all we need to display, we're not doing a loop for this. We're just going to display the policies found. That's when we display it in that screen. So let's take a closer look. First of all, I've got this one screen where you can see everything all in one step. So you can see it's really a quite simple flow. And just to reiterate the three steps here, we got step one, get contacts. Step two, get the junction. Step three, get the policies. Four, screens. Sorry, was there a question? Okay. All right, let me show you the flow itself in a little bit more detail. As I mentioned, this is a screen flow. Even though there's this perception that screen flows are something that a user interacts with, right? Fill in this field, hit next, continue along this. This screen flow is just a screen flow in the instance that it's a UI, it's a user interface that's being displayed to the user. But they're not actually interacting with this. So the first thing that we do here is we are getting, bear with me, we are getting all the contacts that match the account ID from the record that this screen flow is embedded on. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we have this decision. And then it loops through the items to add them to a collection. Now you can see here, I've got a fault path coming off of all my pink gets, and that's going to my fault screen. So this is the screen that we have just in case, right? If something goes wrong, we want to let the user know that we're aware of the issue and they should try again. So in this fault screen, I can pretty it up. This is just plain text, of course, but I basically am just adding a message and I don't know if I can zoom in. If you can't see it, it just says there was an issue retrieving the information. Whoops. Please close the page, try again. Now you can add whatever text you want. I also like to add, if the error persists, give your Salesforce administrator the following detail. And I'll type in the name of the flow. I'll put a timestamp and the actual error message. So those are coming in from the dollar flow variable. So you can see there's a couple flow informations that you could put in. You could put a GUI from the interview itself, the actual record it's on. um, anything that you might need to help troubleshoot, anything from the record itself that might you think might be useful down the road. So this is the error message that you're putting out there just in case. I will say that with some of the new features on this flow moderation, you might be able to get by without adding all of the flow details because you can see flow errors in the automation app now. But it's still nice to have because sometimes people will email you like something went wrong and you don't, that's all they tell you. Like, I don't know what I was doing. It just stopped working. Now you can actually say, hey, look at the error message and what was the timestamp on it, or something like that to give you more clues as to what they were doing when it broke. And as you can see here, this one's flow screen is a fault for each of my gets. And if you haven't had the opportunity to work on flow errors yet, um, it's quite simple to add a new error to the screen. Um, simple was, let's see here. So you could create the screen first, and then you can add connectors to connect it to it. Um, and then you can also decide if you wanted to change that down the road. And not being my friend right now. So as I mentioned earlier, I've got all my flows going to one error screen, but you can certainly customize that. The other thing that I think is important to point out for this type of flow is that there are, of course, limitations with flow. And to make sure that we don't run into them or we're less likely to run into them, I do strongly recommend that under how many records to store, that you add a limit to it. I like to keep it under 2,000 records. And if you think that your records might have more results than that, you can always decide to sort them by a certain criteria. So I'm going to, in this case, I'm showing 1,000 contacts based on created date. So if there are 1,100 contacts, it's only going to show me the most recent 1,000 contacts. So you can add essentially that filter logic to limit the records that come in. What I would suggest you do if you think you might run over that a lot, or if that's a consideration, is on your final screen that you add a message to something like, and I'll go to my final screen here. So this is my policies that display. I might choose to add a message that says that only the, whoops, only the first 1,000 contacts are returned. Or in this case, only the, just to make sure there's no confusion, and then give them directions to contact, run a report or contact their BI team if they need more records. And that'll save you some heartache down the road. Questions on that? Okay. Um, if you're needing this sort of solution with something with a lot of records and you think you'd be running into limits, then this is not the solution for you, right? This isn't going to necessarily work for everything, but for a lot of use cases, it will work. Let me see how we're doing on time here. I'm going to pause, see what questions I can answer. No? Okay.
Nope, nothing. Oh, there is one from the chat. No, just asking about if we're recording it. We are going to be recording it. And I'll I'll post that out later here. So
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, I have to run for a work meeting, so,
no
but thank you
problem.
so far.
Thank you. Okay. Um, the other screen so I showed you the fault screen, and I have all three of my gets going to the faults. The other screen after each decision, if no records are found, then I have just a really generic screen that says there are no related policies for this account. You can obviously enhance this, make it prettier, add some more meaningful information. But for this particular use case, it is what it is, right? There are no policies to display. The last screen, I kind of briefly went over it real quick, was the screen that displays the actual list of policies. So in order to add that screen, you essentially would add a data table to your screen that displays. So again, this is a screen flow, but we really only have one screen, and that's a data table screen. I am populating that data table with my last collection of all the policies that I got from the Get Policies. And then just in case you haven't had a chance to play with this, um, I'm not allowing them to select any rows because it's just display only. They're not doing anything. But I can add columns as well and select different columns that I want to display. So right now I have policy name, status, and amount. But perhaps I want to add a start date or a policy type to the screen. I can just select that from my list of fields on the policy. And then I can even, which I really like, is give it a custom name because perhaps how the policy is doesn't necessarily meet their needs. Um, sometimes with like related lists, you might see the the junction object before that. So you can really customize it to your needs there. Policy type, and then display whether it wraps or clips. So a lot of things that you previously had to do inside of some coding, you can do quite easily inside of the Salesforce flow. Questions so far? Okay, let's go into the loop itself. As I mentioned earlier, that's something that a lot of non-developers really struggle with is this concept of looping through and adding items to a collection. A couple of pieces of advice. One, and this is universal, is to write meaningful descriptions and meaningful labels. If you've done anything with Agentforce, you know that that's more important than ever. If you should decide to use the flow inside of an Agentforce, it literally will take the label and description that you add and use that in its processing. So if you haven't gotten into the habit of writing descriptions for anything you make, now's the time to start. Um, so I am taking the contact records from all of the collection of contacts that I got in my very first get, and I'm basically iterating over all of them because I want to get all of the contact policies for all the contacts. So I'm adding them to a loop, and then because Salesforce Flow doesn't really have any kind of memory unless you tell it to store something. You have to actually tell it to store the values from the records you got. In this particular case, all I care about is the contact IDs. So that's the only value that I'm saving here is the contact ID. But you could save a lot of information from the contact besides just the contact ID. The important thing to keep in mind is that you want to really limit what you're using, what you're storing. If you don't plan on actually using that value ever, then don't save it. It's just kind of wasting resources. Keep it to a minimum to what you actually need here. So basically, I'm adding the contact ID to my new collection. I'm assigning that value to it. And then the same thing for the other gets. Once I have that screen flow saved and I activate it, then I can actually add it to the page. So if I go back to the account page and I go to edit the lightning page, for this particular screen flow, because we want it to run when the user, we don't want it to run all the time, right? That's just kind of a waste of resources. So I put it behind a tab. You can call the tab whatever you want. I just called this one policies. There's my tab over here. And then you drop in the flow lightning, the flow component, pardon me. So let's just kind of recreate this here and add a new tab. Give it a name. Over on my components side here, I can see flows as a standard component. Oops. So I cannot drop it there. Let's drop it here. So I add that here as a standard component, but then I have to tell this page which flow to use. It's just going to default to this alphabetical one, but mine is called grandchildren flow. So I'll specify that flow instead. And then the last thing is I have to tell this flow what record to use. So if you recall, the flow looked at all the contacts based on the record ID that the account record ID, pardon me, that they're related to. So what I do for that is pass in, oh, I was hoping I could copy and paste it. All I have to do, excuse me, is just check pass record ID into this variable because I want this flow to run based on this particular account. I don't want to hard code any account. I just want this one. So it's super easy to set up. And then I would just save it. Okay, questions so far? All right. Um, that's kind of it. I do have some screenshots here of the different resources that I have. You can see the flow doesn't take a lot. There's not much happening here for as powerful as it is. And then we talked about the error screen, talked about the no records found, and adding it to the account page. So just to reiterate some of the tips before I close here, it's a best practice, just like it would be in any Apex code that you write, to use meaningful variable names. As I mentioned earlier, be sure and add descriptions. Not only are they helpful for us humans, but even more important now, or equally important, is Agentforce will use them as well. Always have a fault path for any of your operations so that it can help guide the user. Otherwise, the out-of-the-box fault is just ugly and kind of garish. I didn't talk about using debug to test your flows, but that is a must, and it's a very nice tool for kind of unit testing and making sure that it's working as anticipated before you turn it over to QA or even user acceptance testing. Be sure to set your maximum records to sell, to store, pardon me, that will help you avoid some of the Salesforce limits that are there. And then monitor flows for automation home. I didn't show you that. Let me dive into that. And then I see your question out there, Mila. If you go into Salesforce setup, you will see an automation app. Excuse me, I said Salesforce setup, but once you're logged in, you can see an automation app under the 9 square app selector. From there, you will see a flows related list. change that to errored flows, and I don't have any in this particular sandbox. But if you did have any error flows, maybe you get an email saying a flow errored or a user calls you, you can just go to your error flow list and see what errored. You can see what record it was on. You can see all kinds of really meaningful information about it. I like to go to it on a regular basis because not every users don't always tell me when things error out. They might just error out and retry it and it works fine, or they realize they did something wrong. So I do like to go in there and see what flows errored so I can learn and improve. Okay, so the question was how many variables and what type did you create? So for my variables, oops. We just have record ID here is the only real variable that gets set. And that is when we got the account ID equals the record ID. So you do have to set that up as a variable, but you will almost have to do that for just about every flow that you end up setting up. Did that help answer your question?
Yes. Thank you. I thought that there were more involved since it looks like there will be more, but it's very simple. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the beauty of this is its simplicity on this one.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions that I can answer? Or anything you want me to show and dive into? Yeah, on the left-hand side, all of my different resources that I have. Okay.
Yeah, I think we got a couple of this looks great. Thank you very much. So yeah, I mean this is a um, you know really good demonstration, I think, of the power of using a flow here. And it looks really good. I'm you know kind of jealous, honestly, that I didn't come up with this one, myself. So
Yeah, it's born out of necessity. I
mhm.
had to get something done, and I thought, well, I don't have a developer to work on it right now.
No,
And yeah. And at first I thought, well, let me see if I can get a Lightning Web component out there. But this is much easier, and it's easier to maintain as well.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, nobody else has any questions. I think we're good to wrap it up here. Thank you again, Susan, for taking time out to go over this flow with us. I think it's, a couple of comments were really loved the way you explained this. It was easy to follow, and great work. Thank you very much for coming today and presenting this to us.
Okay, glad to hear that. Hopefully I'll see some of you at Dreamforce.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay, awesome. Well, everybody else have a good rest of your day and a good weekend. And keep an eye out for the next one whenever I get that scheduled.
Sure. Thank you, everyone.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
Thank
you.
you.
Have a nice
Take care.
Everyone, have a great
weekend.
All right.
weekend.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.